All right. How's everybody doing? Nonverbal communication, I like it. I like the enthusiasm. The next speaker is Edwina Rogers with the Secular Coalition for America. She just joined as the executive director a couple months ago in May, but they've hit the ground running with a flurry of action alerts and initiatives. Before joining the coalition, Edwina has over 2 decades of experience lobbying and building coalitions in particular. She's worked for 2 presidents and 4 senators, and one of the really neat coalitions she worked on was the Patient-Centered Primary Care Collaborative, which brought together a really diverse set of groups from the healthcare providers to labor unions to employers to find common ground on what they could do to help patient care. And that's a lot of like what the coalition does, finding the common ground with what all of us in the secular movement care about, which is representing secular Americans in the nation's capital, lobbying for separation of church and state, and really defending our visibility. She's going to talk about the coalition, of which the Secular Student Alliance is a member. I think we were one of the founding members. Also, I see Camp Quest, the Society for Humanistic Judaism. I know the American Humanist Association around here, the American Ethical Union. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else in the Atheist Alliance of America, used to be Atheist Alliance International. Anybody else in particular? Shout out Camp Quest. Anybody else who is here and deserves a shout out? Council for Secular Humanism. If anybody is not here, they don't get a shout out, but I will. Humanists, the most recent addition. And if anybody can name the others, I'll be very impressed. Institute for Humanist Studies. Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, as Jason Torpy just presented. American Atheists just walked in. It's actually the Council for Secular Humanism is a member. All right, I'm sorry, I'm cutting into Edwina's time. Let's give her a round of applause and let her talk about the coalition.
Great, thank you everybody. We have a lot of information to go over, so I'm going to move rather quickly, which is a little bit hard to do for a Southern girl from Alabama, but I will do my best. So you heard a little bit about the Secular Coalition for America, and so we have a mission statement, and it's twofold. We want to increase the respect for the non-theist community, and also we want to strengthen the secular character of our government. And we think this is the best guarantee for freedom for all. And we are 10 years old, so we're very proud of that. And basically what we focus on has to do with, we facilitate the coordination within the movement, and we put our member organizations out front. So who do we claim that we're representing here? Well, we're claiming that we represent the 52.8% of Americans that think political leaders should not rely on religious beliefs when they're making their decisions. Also, we're claiming that we're looking after the 16% of Americans that consider themselves nuns. And these nuns, they don't have a religious affiliation, but they're actually 3 times larger than the Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Mormon populations combined. So they're a bit of a silent majority, and we're going to tap into them. Now, I'm going to speak quickly about the millennials because this is a student organization and younger people. But I want to point out that there's a 14% increase in people who are considered millennials. They're 11% unaffiliated with religion at childhood, but then by the time they get to 18 to 24 years old, they're 24% unaffiliated. So you can see where they're picking up the numbers from the Catholics and from the Protestants. And we can guess as to why that happens. I think university has a lot to do with it. Now, with regard to the belief in God and belief in the Bible, the millennials, they have 14% do not believe in God, and 37% say that the Bible is a book written by man and not the Word of God. Now, where does this fit in with sort of the other countries in the world? I know that in Estonia, you've got about 16% in Estonia actually do believe in God. In the Czech Republic's about 18%. Sweden's about 20%. Even the United Kingdom is only 38%. In Canada, it's 53%. But in the U.S. right now, it's something around 90%. for the whole population. So think about that. You know, why is that the case? Now I want to talk about Facebook. And the reason I want to point out this issue with regard to Facebook is that we just talked about 14% of people in your age group don't believe in God, but then 25% of them say that they're unaffiliated, but then 65% of them don't identify with any religion on Facebook. And so this is the way you present yourself on Facebook. So for some reason, people like to be a little more flexible in their presentation to the public on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and so everyone that has their iPad, if you could flip it out and like us, that would be great. Help us get our numbers up. Now, this next slide shows you, it has to do with what makes America great. And so this was a polling question. The blue categories are the people who say that because American is open to change. The green categories say it protects the traditions and doesn't change so much. So this has to do with just millennials, just people college age. And if you look at the unaffiliated, you've got 76% think that America's great because it's open to change, and only 16% say because it protects the traditional values. So as the religion goes down, people are more willing to have free thought. Now, about the Secular Coalition for America, this slide just shows you that we are very organized and we're very accountable, which is important when you're trying to increase your visibility and unify a movement. So that's the point that we want to make there. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the member organizations. These are our voting members here. You can see their symbols. And so we have most of the groups included. There are, of course, a few more that we would love to recruit and get them involved. Now, why do I have this slide here that shows the endorsing organizations of the Secular Coalition for America? The reason I have this is that this is a snapshot of the groups that we had endorsing us in May of 2012. We had 34. Now, here we are in July, and we have 45. Now, hopefully by the end of the year, because we're on a big campaign right now, we'll have hundreds. And so the point is that all of your chapters for SSA, you can simply go online on our homepage and endorse us and have your group listed. So I would really encourage you to do that. How does this help us? It helps us when we go in to meet with decision makers in the government, whether it's at the state level or it's at the federal level. I would love to be able to say, we have 834 endorsing organizations, you know, not just 34. So we're on a bit of a campaign drive. I'm sure that you can relate to that. Now, with regard to allies, what are allies? Endorsing groups, they can endorse your whole mission statement. Allies are groups that they can work with you on this issue and that issue, but not every issue. So we're also looking for allies. They could be business groups and think tanks and social groups. It's going to be by topic. Now, we've picked up 3 in just the last couple of weeks, but we were not tracking those previously, so we are now currently tracking them. So if you're involved with other groups, you might be involved in a local chapter of ACLU or Americans United, and you could become an ally. So I would encourage you to also help us there. So you can see there are a lot of ways to get involved in the movement. Now, these are currently coalitions in D.C. that are national coalitions that we're involved in. There are 7 of them, but we're looking for many more that we're going to get involved in. Mainly, we work closely with ACLU, Americans United, Catholics for Choice. Those are some of the examples. Now, what are the policy areas that we're lobbying on for the movement? They are health and safety, education, the military, tax policy, discrimination, government actions, and international issues. Now, some examples of health and safety would be we're focused on the medical professionals denying care based on their personal beliefs, religious employers denying health care coverage based on their personal beliefs, religiously based child abuse and neglect, religiously based substance abuse treatment, and religiously based health policy. I'm not so used to this phasing in. I know it keeps people interested. Now, this is a chart that shows you, probably most of you have read about and heard about the contraception issue, which is really hot right now in Washington and around the country. So you can see here, this is a focus on people who are opposed to it, and people who think that people should have access to contraception. And you can see in the age group, the millennials there, 60% versus 36% think that people should have access because of their individual rights. And then as you get older, it completely reverses. That thought does. Now, some of the other issues that we care about has to do with education. As a matter of fact, we just went through a strategic planning survey where we sent out to our whole database, and we got about 1,700 responses back. And they were telling us that they thought education should be our #1 priority. And there are obvious reasons as to why people are thinking that way within the movement. So we look after public funding of religious schools. We look after that not happening, of course. Schools discriminating against non-theist students, religious influence on public schools curriculum, and also religious coercion of public school students. And so a lot of this has to do with teaching evolution versus creationism, or teaching medically correct sex education versus abstinence only. Now, the military, I'm not going to really spend any time on that because most of you heard from Jason Torpy a little bit earlier, and he gave us a brilliant, detailed talk on the issues in the military. But I want to point out that the military is actually very young, so that's something that the people in this room should care about. Part of the problem is that you've got a little more than 22% are not affiliated with any particular religion, but then you have 98% of the chaplains are Christian. There aren't any humanist chaplains. So we see the problem is that the military chaplains do not equally represent and serve all of the military. And the military can be quite religious. There are a lot of religious events surrounding the military, so that's something that we're certainly keeping an eye on. Now let's move on to tax policy. Tax policy has to do with, they have tax-free housing for the clergy. We're all paying for that. There are also many exemptions for religious nonprofits with regard to getting disclosures done and other paperwork. And we also saw a report that the Center for Inquiry recently did that said that it costs taxpayers $71 billion a year for the federal government to subsidize religion in the United States. Moving on to discrimination. This is something that also affects your age group. We've got religiously motivated discrimination in employment. We also have it in housing, and you find it a lot in trying to rent a place, and you also find it in adoption. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on. Now, moving on to government actions. This has a lot to do with everything from crosses being on buildings to the pledge to In God We Trust being on the money, the government officials endorsing religion, taxpayer money furthering religious beliefs, and also religiously based policy, and the religious definition of the civil marriage, which is something that we do care about. Now, with regard to allowing gay and lesbian people to marry, you can see that for all millennials, you've got a strong majority that think that that should be the case, and it should be something that the government determines and not any particular religion. You got 59% versus 37%. But then when you get down to the unaffiliated, look how the number jumps, 81% to 17%. So when you take religion out of the equation, then you get a very different result. And among the white evangelicals, you see it's just the opposite. 27% think that it should not be allowed, and 69% think that it should. Now, moving on to international issues, we do have, we can't just live here in a silo, in a vacuum here in the U.S. and not think about the rest of the country, the rest of the world. And of course, our federal government spends a lot of money working in other countries and supporting programs. So we're particularly interested in religiously based international policy and U.S. aid to countries that limit religious freedom. Now, how are we getting all this done? We currently have a very aggressive implementation plan to coordinate the movement and help the member organizations be successful and making the secular movement very mainstream. So we have a national movement update call with a newsletter every Thursday at noon that everybody's invited to participate in. We have a legislative regulatory call every 2 weeks that people are also invited to. We usually have speakers, like, for example, we're having a high-level Republican policy staffer coming on our call up on Tuesday. We have Hill briefings that we're planning. We do legislative tracking. We also do it at the federal level and the state level, and we do scorecards. Now, just a couple of minutes on the political landscape, and a lot of these slides are more for your reference, and I'm sure that this will be put on the website. Not everything we can go over in detail. This is the current vote prediction with regard to the presidential election, and the reason I'm pointing this out is that we are involved in that we have coalition liaisons at all the presidential campaigns. We are also planning a presence at the two major party conventions, Republican and Democratic. And we even heard from the Greens just recently. They said, you're doing this call every week. You're talking about the other parties. Also talk about us. Now, this next slide shows you what's happening in the Senate. So we have 33 Senate seats that are up this time. It's always 1/3 in the Senate and the whole House. And 10 of them are considered toss-ups. 15 of them are pretty safe, Democratic leaning, and 8 are Republican. And we're not expecting a change in the Senate. Now you can see here, out of the toss-ups, 7 of them are Democratic and 3 are Republican. Now the House, of course, we have a different issue there, in that we've got the whole House up, so we've got 435 seats up, and the Dems have 22 that are lean or toss-up, and we've got 2 of those people that we've graded an F grade on our scorecard, so we'd like to see them go. And on the Republican side, we've got 31 that are leaning or toss-up. The others are pretty safe seats, so we've got to focus on where you can make a difference. And on the Republican side, we've got 25 of the 31 that we have an F for them on the scorecards on the issues that we care about. And the Republicans control the House by 49 seats, so the Democrats would have to pick up 25 seats to take over control of the House. And most of the folks that do the handicapping for a living are predicting that the Republicans will pick up about approximately 6 more seats. And a lot of that has to do with redistricting. Like, for example, Ohio has lost several seats, and states like Texas that are more conservative have picked up those seats. Now, a little bit more on what else are we doing to unify the movement and coordinate and show results. We are planning a policy lobby day for next year. We have the National Secular Calendar on our website. We're doing the scorecards on the elected officials. We also are coordinating research. A lot of the policy issues that we care about, we need better, higher quality research. We are helping our members track and coordinate judiciary issues, lawsuits that are being filed. We're planning videos and webinars, and most importantly, our state chapters. So let's move on to state issues. So in the state, the legislatures at the moment, you've got 25 of the 50 states are controlled by Republicans. You've got 16 controlled by Democrats, and 8 are split. When you throw in the governors, you still have 20 states that are controlled by Republican, 11 controlled by Democrats, and 18 are split. The point of this is that at the state level, it's very important for us to be willing to work with both parties, because secular values are American values, and they're not, should not be controlled or owned by any one particular party. Now, as far as the state chapters, we are setting them up in all 50 states, plus Puerto Rico and D.C., and we're hoping to have them all organized by the end of the year, and we're well on our way. We had 2 in May, and now we currently have 20 that we could claim. And we're doing this by monthly calls, and this is something that you as students can get involved in. You can call in on these state chapter organizing calls, and I'll tell you how to get the information. We have it posted on our website. We have all the phone numbers. We have all the dates on our newsletter and our national update call that we have every Thursday. Now you can see we had 2. We had Alabama. We had Arizona. This was phase 1. So we've already done these states. They're organized. They've all even had their second calls. And this is our next phase, the next, and the next, and then finally the last few states. So we will be getting to all the states and have them up and running by the end of September. Now, just some examples of why are we getting organized at the state level? Because many more scary, egregious issues are actually happening at the state level than at the federal level. So we have six states have laws that allow pharmacists to refuse to fill emergency prescriptions for contraception. We have 21 states that offer exemptions from contraceptive coverage for employers with varying degrees of religious affiliation. We have 44 states that have laws that require public school classes to recite a pledge of allegiance stating, "We are a nation under God." We have only 18 states that require sex education curricula to be medically correct. And so you can see, and we have many more details here, and this would be, I've got 2 more slides here on scary state legislation, but we will save that for another day. But it's here for your reference on the PowerPoint. Now, just 2 minutes on lobbying, because we need all of you to become professional lobbyists, and we're going to quickly go over how you do that. And so, in a nutshell, I would say that probably if you look at lobbying as basically just a 2-step process, 1, you want to get your fair hearing, and 2, you want to go in and present your case in the best light as possible. So if you just think of it like that, then you can see that it's really not very complicated. So you have to figure out what your issues are, just pick 1 or 2, and then you become an expert on those issues. And then you figure out who is it that's dealing with your issues, which branch of government, which committees, which parties matter. And we're, of course, looking after the local level, the state level, and the federal level. And then you set up the meeting. It really helps to set up the meeting with emails and with your age group. You're very good with emails and texts and things of that nature. And then you be tenacious and you get the meeting. If you ask, you'll get your fair hearing, because usually elected officials are not in the business to say, no, I'm not going to meet with you. So if you ask, most of the time you will actually get the meeting. And then you have to prepare. You have to be very prepared, and you need your documents. You can do role playing, and you need your policy statement documents. We have those on our website that you can pull down on these issues that we talked about, and you can go in and use them at the local level and also at the state level. And then this is just a reminder of getting ready for your lobbying visits. Now, we have all kinds of resources here at the Secular Coalition for America. As I mentioned, we have the National Movement Update Call every Thursday that has a newsletter with it. Will soon also be a podcast. We have the National Secular Calendar. We have PowerPoints that are in the resource section that are available for anyone in the movement to use. We blog. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We do action alerts. And we have a website that is very informative. So that's the end of my formal remarks. So we'll open it up for questions to see if anyone has any questions or advice for us, because we are basically like the staff secretary for the movement. So on our calls, we always work on our list of things to do from our member organizations. Do we have any questions or comments?